Reading number 2100 is the prototype of the T1 class of 484 Northern type steam locomotives, constructed in September of 1945 for use by the Reading Company. 2100 was originally numbered 2045, and in her original form was constructed in 1923 by Baldwin Locomotive Works as an I-10SA Class 280 Consolidation type locomotive. In that form, she pulled heavy freight trains, but beginning in 1945, Reading would move 30 of their I-10SAs to their shops, and with the assistance of Baldwin, they were rebuilt into the T1 class of Northerns. As she's a prototype, it may be obvious that she was indeed the first, renumbered to 2100. And she was assigned to pull, well, freight again, but heavy freight and coal trains across Reading's main line and some of the branch lines in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. But this second lease on life was pretty short-lived for the T1s in general. By 1954, Reading had removed nearly all their steam locomotives from revenue service, including all the T1s, although a surge in traffic in 1956 caused them to recall some of the T1s to service, but they were withdrawn again by 1957 and not returned that time. The Reading really appreciated their steam locomotives. They acknowledged the heritage, and in October of 1959, they began hosting their own steam excursion program, dubbed the Iron Horse Rambles. One of 2100's sisters, 2124, was used to pull the first of these trains, and during the 1961 operating season, the Rambles peaked at 14 excursions for the entire year. That same year, 2100 was removed from storage and began pulling the trains alongside her sister, and later another sibling, 2102, would also join them. The majority of these trains would travel to Gettysburg, though some of the other ones headed over to Philadelphia, West Milton, Tamaqua, Shamokin, as well as Wilmington, Delaware. On August 15th and 16th of 1964, 2100 traveled outside of Reading's lines and pulled a small series of round trips between Baltimore, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. for the B&O's Iron Horse Days program. But as well as the steam program was doing, ever since 1960, in general, the Reading Railroad had been experiencing financial problems, and the rising maintenance costs of the T1s was slowly creeping up on them. They'd been deferring maintenance about this time, so all this combined meant that they had no choice but to discontinue the steam excursion operations. The 51st and final Rambles train occurred on October 17, 1964, between Philadelphia and Tamaqua. This almost spelled the end for 2100. Alongside 2101, in September of 1967, she was sold to the Striegel Equipment and Supply Company and sent to their scrapyard in Baltimore, where they were placed into storage. However, they weren't scrapped immediately, and in 1975, they were fortunate enough to be purchased again for $25,000 by a man named Ross Rowland, a man who over the years has distinguished himself as someone who cares quite a bit about railroad preservation, and has helped reignite a lot of steam locomotives' careers. At the time, he was working on developing the American Freedom Train tour, and both 2100 and 2101 were moved to the former Western Maryland Roundhouse in Hagerstown, Maryland. However, at the time, it was decided to restore 2101 to operational condition, since her boiler was in better condition. 2100 was therefore designated as a parts locomotive. However, as we discussed when we talked about 2101 in our own video, she was damaged very badly in a roundhouse fire in 1979. 2101 and 2100 swapped tenders, and then Rowland decided to operate 2100 in excursion service, alongside the locomotive he had gotten to replace 2101, Chesapeake and Ohio 614. A non-profit group was established, known as the 2100 Corporation. It included Rowland, as well as Gary Bentzman, Bill Benson, and the owner and CEO of Lionel Trains at the time, Richard Coogan. Together they worked to have 2100 restored to operational condition, with some of the parts that had survived the fire being taken off of 2101. 2100 underwent a stationary fire test in 1987, and it was announced in late 1988, after spending $900,000. Listen, I keep telling you people how expensive it is to do this. That's in 1988 money. Restoration work was complete. And on March 25th, 1989, 2100 performed a test run on the Winchester and Western Railroad. Prior to this, CSX had actually sold the Hagerstown roundhouse for redevelopment, and after negotiations to purchase the roundhouse had failed, Rowland had to remove both 2100 and 614 from the building. 2100 would then be relocated to Bennington, West Virginia. In November of 1991, 2100 moved under her own power to the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway shops in Brewster, Ohio, for storage, and plans were made to operate her on the railway, but they never actually came into being for whatever reason. Rowland and his 2100 Corporation partners then decided it was best to donate her to the Portage, Ohio Regional Transportation Authority, otherwise known as PORTA, who agreed to allow Bill Benson to use the locomotive to pull excursions on their own trackage around Cleveland, Ohio, but no arrangements for this were made? What's happening? Is anyone going to use her? She's ready to go, guys! What are we doing? Sometime after this, Wheeling and Lake Erie asked for 2100 to please be removed from the shop since she was kind of in the way, and it was then arranged that the Ohio Central Railroad would store her in Coshocton. Porta then put her up for sale because if no one was going to use her, they really had no reason to keep her. In September of 1997, 2100 would be displayed during Ohio Central's Steam Fest 97 event, alongside their own steam locomotives. But interestingly, she was the only one not fired up for the weekend occasion. An auction to sell her was held on January 16, 1998, with 8 bidders attending the event, including Ohio Central owner Jerry Joe Jacobson. But the winner was a man named Thomas Payne, who was a chairman of Rail Link Limited of Edmonton, Alberta, up in Canada. In June, 2100 again moved under her own power. Seriously, she's been running this whole time. Why is nobody utilizing this? But she moved under her own power to Cleveland, Ohio, and then Payne had her towed to the Elgin County Railway Museum's former New York Central Shop complex in St. Thomas, Ontario, for some repair work. Once there, she actually received some cosmetic changes, including the addition of 3 ditch lights and striped running boards. She was also relettered as Ferocis, which is Latin for iron horse. It was attempted to convert her from coal to oil firing, but that process wasn't considered successful. On November 23, 1999, she performed her first test run with Payne's modifications, and on August 26th to the 27th of the year 2000, she was fired up and displayed outside the ECRM during the museum's Iron Horse Festival. Payne would then make plans to use her to pull excursions on Rail Link-owned regional and shortline railways in Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec. But all those plans fell through, because... Okay, this is just so frustrating to me. This entire locomotive story is, yep, she's running. Where to? We don't know! Just can someone please organize a run at some point? And a lot of this was going on in the 90s. There were other steam locomotives allowed to run in the 90s, okay? I understand it's very difficult today, especially, but back then, listen, guys, come on. Since the plans fell through, 2100 was left in storage for a few more years, and in late 2005, she was moved to Tacoma, Washington, where she finally began pulling some trains again. Some sightseeing excursions, in fact, for Payne's Golden Pacific Tourist Railroad, using Tacoma Rail's former Milwaukee Road line. But by 2007, the Golden Pacific Railroad had closed down from low ridership, and 2100 was subsequently placed into outdoor storage in Richland, Washington. Sometime after this, her ownership switched again to an undisclosed individual. I understand that sounds sinister, but her current status is known. In the spring of 2015, the American Steam Railroad Preservation Association, or ASR, announced that they had signed a long-term loan on number 2100, and they made plans to restore her and revert it to a coal burner since her oil firing really wasn't going super well. They would wind up launching their own fundraising campaign called Fire Up 2100, and they estimated that the restoration would cost $700,000 to finish. She and her tender were loaded onto 2 separate heavy-duty flat cars, and they were shipped via BNSF, Norfolk Southern, and CSX, hitting 3 of the big 4, are we, all the way back to Cleveland, Ohio, over a 2-month period. Once she got there, she was moved inside the Midwest Railway Preservation Society's ex-B&O roundhouse, right next to their own locomotive, Grand Truck Western 4070, who we also discussed on a previous video, and the ASR then began work to restore 2100. The most recent information, as of August 2023, is that the ASR announced that they and FMW Solutions were making plans to modify 2100's firebox to burn recycled vegetable oil instead of coal. Now, I don't know how much I agree with that decision because A, Payne already tried making her an oil burner, and you guys even readily admit that didn't go super well, and now you want to use recycled vegetable oil fuel. Which, okay, I recognize is a cleaner alternative to regular oil, and can be done, but are we doing this? This is already an expensive project, is all I'm trying to say. Can we just make her work right now and focus on the vegetable oil later? I don't know, it bothers me a bit that that's where we're going, but if they can make it work, then great, whatever. In November, they then announced that once 2100 is restored, they plan on painting her in the American Freedom Train colors, which is a weird decision because those colors were worn by her sister, 2101. But, hey, whatever, it'll look cool, I don't care. And just last month, March of 2024, 2100's boiler passed her FRA-mandated hydrostatic test, which is a really good sign for her future. Hopefully soon, she'll be up and running once again, and maybe this time anybody, please don't let me down, ASR, will actually be able to run her properly, like she should be. This is the original T1, the eldest of all her siblings, and I just feel like she deserves to run again, but based on what we can tell, things are very optimistic for her future in particular. So, with any luck, in a few months or a year, I'll be able to say, hey, 2100's running again. And what a fun day that will be. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Brian, Jack Carson's Roar Videos, Lord Off 444, A Person 723, Royal Hunter 2860, Iser for 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Caleb Brainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Stolinsky, Jared Brussel, Joshua Long, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitchen 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terevel, Liam Wright, Hayden DeGrow, Metal for Life Guy, Hannah Bird, No, Eric Hutton, Williard Conklin, Kirk Forkham, Ohio Trucker 1, Mitchell Cole, Mr. Sleepy, Dr. Racer 78, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.